You're listening to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice, where we honor the bravery of the first responders and the families who stand behind them. Real people, real stories, real heroes. This is 8158.
Welcome to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice, where we honor the stories of first responders, their families, and the extraordinary journeys that shape their lives. Today's guest is someone whose life story is a testament to resilience, redemption, and finding purpose. Joining us is your host, Rico, the visionary behind 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Raised amidst challenging circumstances, Rico's early life was marked by instability, trouble, and a search for belonging. Despite brushes with the law, time in juvenile detention, and even prison, Rico's story is one of transformation. While serving 14 years in prison, Rico found opportunities to gain skills, from earning his CDL to exploring paramedics training. It was during this time that he began to develop a sense of purpose that would guide him toward the life he lives today. Since his release, Rico has become a truck driver, a homeowner, and a proud fiancé. But one event in 2024 changed everything, losing his cousin Billy, a sheriff's deputy in the line of duty. This devastating loss inspired Rico to find a way to give back to the first responder community despite the challenges of his past. Today, he's here to share his incredible journey, how 8158 Podcast was born, and his mission to amplify the voices of those who serve and sacrifice for others. Let's hear his story.
Hello, I'm Rico, host of 8158 Podcast. For today's episode, I am going to have my wonderful and beautiful fiance, who is my productions manager. She is going to be doing my interviews, so she is a guest host for today. She's going to ask me a series of questions so that the listeners can kind of get to know a little bit about me and why I have started this podcast. So with that being said, I'm going to hand over the reins to Brianne, and she will get started.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Like Rico said, I am the production manager. So I do all the stuff behind the scenes, all of the emails that you get when you contact us, you're going to get from me. I schedule all the interviews. I set up all the questions. I do all the social media. So that's my job. I'm the behind the scenes girl. So thanks for having me. And I'm excited to interview you today. So let's get started. In the intro, we talked a little bit about how you had a lot of challenges growing up and you moved around a lot. So can you describe what that was like, what some of the major challenges were frequently by having to move around a lot?
Moving around a lot, it had, I guess it was a double-edged sword. On one side, it was hard because you made new friends and you got to know people and you had to move. And you had to start over, new schools, new friends. And it was hard, when you're a kid, you don't want to leave your friends behind, but yet, what can you do? You're not the adult, and so you're pretty much at the will of your parents. Whatever they do, that's what you got to do. You got to follow.
Right.
On the other hand, that allowed me to view things a little differently and allowed me to get to know a bunch of people, get to know different people, and not just be stuck in one place. I know a lot of people have the opportunity to grow up in the same towns and the same places and have a reputation of being, the face of the town. I didn't have that. I just had, that uncertainty of where I was going to be. And that was a challenge in itself, is not knowing, because you come across people that maybe don't like who you are or what you look like, and they judge you for who you are, and then you have to overcome that challenge, and you either uh, try to deal with that or you try to stay away from those kind of people. And I guess I became self-reliant and, becoming judging, not judging people, but kind of getting a sense of who people were. And I didn't really withdraw from people. It just made me sit back and, read people better, I guess, to kind of get to know that who that person really was. You know, instead of coming out and just being a socialite, I just kind of stand back and just kind of read them and to see if they were somebody that I would want to associate with.
Yep, that makes complete sense. Okay, so we also talked about in the intro that you did not have a stable role model in your life. And so, how did the absence of that shape your view of family and responsibility?
Well, the absence of the role model, it, it was kind of hard because, again, I had to become self-reliant. I had to take care of myself. I had to learn things on my own. There was a period of time, with my mother being with, different men in and out of the house. Um, and there was a sense of abandonment too when you got to know somebody and they would leave, and you got to know them and you got comfortable with them. They were just going to take off, and that was just something that I had to kind of deal with and get over, and to become my own man in a sense. Um, Obviously, it wasn't the healthiest way to do it, but it was a way of me coping as a child, and a way of me trying to, I guess, overcome obstacles that I had in front of me.
And you had to grow up really fast.
Oh, absolutely. I had to grow up really fast. I mean, I helped my mother with my sister, changing her diapers and feeding her and doing all these things. And I was only 6 years old at that time.
Yeah,
And that's not the first time I've had to do that. I've had to do it multiple times after.
right. So, you had talked about how your grandfather, before he passed away, was a detective, and that your dad, who wasn't really around a lot, was a firefighter. But how did that view your perception of first responders, even though they weren't really around? What was your perception of them based on that?
I was pretty proud of the fact that my grandfather was a detective. Before that, he was a motor patrol. And when we used to go to my grandparents' house, he had this book, and it had all these police pins on it and all these pictures that were in it. And it had pictures of him and his bike, and pictures of when JFK was in Berkeley, California, because he was in Berkeley, police detective. And I was always proud of that fact. And I was always excited as a kid to go see that book, because that was like my favorite book to go look at. You know, I mean, it was just kind of an amazing thing for me. And that was the first thing that I gravitated towards. Um, and my father, I was just a baby when my father was a firefighter, first responder, and I was probably about 2 years old. And I wish I still had that picture, but it was a picture of me in this Granny Smith candy apple green fire truck, and with his helmet on. And that was the only picture. And I was probably about 2 years old. And I always thought that that was the coolest thing, of me sitting in that fire truck with the fire helmet on. And I wish I knew where that picture was. I'd have it posted up in my office right now. Um, it made me proud to know that my dad was serving. It made me proud to know that my grandfather, uh, on my mom's side, was serving and had served his community. Um, but like I said, they weren't a huge influence on me because they weren't around me. Grandfather, he's gone, and my dad lived in a different state, and it was just hard. So it's not like that influence kind of stuck with me because it was not part of my life.
Right, right. Okay, well, let's move on to your more formative years. So you were with the Big Brother Big Sister program and you had a mentor. How would you say that that has influenced your life or had influenced your life during those informative years?
Um, yeah, so I was in a big sister, little brother program, and um, funny enough, the person that was chosen for me, he worked in the jail, and he was becoming a cop, and he served in the military. Um, and I just thought I didn't really know the guy. I was kind of intimidated by him a bit, and he kind of, worked his way in and just kind of let me know because he looked pretty mean, but he was a really nice guy. He was an amazing person. Um, and that had an impact on me too because I was proud to know who he was. And there was a period of time where he was gone, and I understood why he was gone because he was in the police academy and he became a full-time police officer. Um, and that made me even prouder. He was a part of my life for quite a few years, growing up. Uh, I'd say from 11 years old till I was about 15.
So you've always kind of had first responders around you, whether directly or indirectly. And now looking back on it, you think about it and you're like, oh man, I had first responders around me all the time. I never realized it now until I started thinking about it. So it's kind of interesting. That's all led now to this point in time. But looking back on the time with him, is there anything that he taught you? Any lessons that stick with you still today?
Um, just being yourself and just standing up for yourself and believing in uh, believing in yourself. Um, Also, he taught me a lot about guns and how not to play with guns. And I remember times when he left his reserve sidearm, leaving staying on the table, his badge there, and I knew not to mess with him. I mean, he brought out his guns and he showed me how to clean them out and showed me how to handle them properly. And he said, these are not toys. You do not point them at people. And he just taught me the proper way to handle weapons.
Good, good. That's really important. There needs to be more education around guns and gun violence and all that stuff.
Well, absolutely. I mean, he had them out all the time, and I never touched them. I never played with them because I
That's
knew there was a purpose behind those weapons, and that in the house there was no purpose. There was no
right.
reason to handle them.
Exactly, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about when you were in the foster care system after you were no longer living with the mentor. What was the most difficult part about moving between different foster homes, and how do you think it shaped your resilience today?
Well, it kind of goes back to the abandonment, because I got really close with Tony and his wife, and that's part of one of the questions here is I was really attached to them, and they were like my second family. We did a lot of family things together, and I was treated like one of their family. You know, I was at their wedding when they got married. We went on vacations together. Wherever we went, we did together. Um, And unfortunately, the time came that they wanted to start their own family and move on, and it was time for me to go to my prospective foster home, whichever the foster care service decided. And again, I felt there was abandonment issues because I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay there, but I knew I couldn't because that's not what they wanted in their life at that time. because they were starting their own family. I felt kind of jaded a little bit.
So obviously, when you were living with him and his wife, you felt like part of their family. You didn't feel like you were, a foster kid or, a temporary situation. You really felt like you were part of their family. And then when you could no longer live with them and you were jumping around from place to place, it definitely was more of a temporary situation, and you just couldn't trust anybody, couldn't get close to anybody, and that kind of, help didn't help with, I'm sure, anxiety and all those kind of things, and being able to trust people and all that kind of stuff, I'm sure.
Exactly, because I lived with them from the time I was 13 until I was 15. I mean, that's doesn't seem like a lot or a long time, but it is. It's a very long time to get attached to somebody.
Especially when you're a kid, when you're that age, 2 years is a long time.
You know? I can't say that I was the perfect kid, but you know what? I was a teenager, so I mean,
Live and learn.
you live and learn.
All right, so let's move on here to some turning points in your life. So you had mentioned that you enlisted or attempted to enlist in the Army National Guard. So what was kind of going through your mind at that time in your life?
At that time, I wasn't really going anywhere, and I didn't have any real purpose in life. And also at that time, I had just had my first child, and I was 19 when her mother was pregnant, and I was 20 when my oldest daughter was born. I didn't want to work fast food. I did because it was a job. I didn't want to work in a small town where, because I was living in a small town at that time, and I just felt like it was a dead end. I didn't want, I didn't want that kind of life for myself, and I didn't want that life for uh, my kids. Um, and I think Tasha might have been on the way by then. And so I had made my attempts to join enlist in the National Guard, and I had some obstacles there because I had some trouble with the law when I was a juvenile, which that's what led me to be in the foster system, and I had to go get waivers and get cleared. During those during that process, life kind of took a turn, and it wasn't anybody else's doing but my own because I didn't uh, fully believe in myself. I didn't uh, take any of the things that I had gained from other people, and then I just became kind of selfish, and I was only thinking about myself, and I kind of threw that away. And uh, I know my life would probably be quite a bit different if I had completed that process.
So you were getting ready to go into the National Guard and you got in some trouble. And I think we mentioned in the intro that you spent some time in prison. So, how do you feel like that time in prison transformed your outlook on life and your sense of purpose?
Well, I mean, prison was not a cakewalk. Being married and having two kids and being in prison, you're at first, you kind of want to try to fit in, but you don't. And a lot of people told me just be you when you go in there, be yourself. Don't get involved with the stuff. Don't, there's certain people, just sit back and figure out who you can trust and hang out with and who you can't. The ones that you can trust are the ones that aren't getting into things, the ones that aren't doing the drugs in there, the ones that aren't smoking, or ones that aren't, that are continuously a part of the revolving door. And again, I did not want that life for me. Of course, you have to go through a series of treatments and groups and all that stuff. And a lot of that was court mandated. And of course, grudgingly, I had to do it. During that process, I started to realize that I needed that. I needed that to grow up. I needed that to uh, find who I am. I needed that to have the courage to, stop being so selfish, or to, there's a word I'm thinking of, and it is not self-centeredness, but it is insecurities.
Oh.
Because I had a lot of insecurities. You know what I mean? You go back and you look at the past. What's happened in the past? I, you know, moved around a lot. I did a lot of stupid things when I was a kid. I went to juvenile hall, and I didn't believe in myself. And, did I play football? Absolutely. Was I good at it? Yeah, fairly good at it. Good at it enough to play in the games. Um, but I still didn't believe in myself. And I had a lot of insecurities in that. And going through the process of treatments helped me to kind of overcome those insecurities and to help me to deal with the abandonment issues and to realize people are going to come and go in your life. That's just a fact. It's just, what do you do with that time period that you have with those people?
Mm-hmm.
That's what means the most.
Mm-hmm. Now, while you were in prison, you had talked about that you got your CDL and became a truck driver and started driving across the state, delivering things and developing skills in that way. And so, how do you feel like that helped you rebuild your life after you got out of prison?
But definitely helped me grow up. I mean, going back to just starting off in prison, I grew up really fast. I mean, I not only grew up fast when I was a kid, but growing up in prison, I grew up super fast. You either had to be a man or be a boy. And if you were a boy, you were taken advantage of. You had to become a man to stand up for yourself so that that didn't happen. So I had to make a choice. Do I remain a boy and live that life of the revolving door and be taken advantage of and be part of the prison social life? Or do I become a man and decide I want to do something for myself that's going to improve myself when I get out of here, and possibly make myself to have a better life? Do I want to, even though it was hard for me to do, I had to do the whole CDL thing, I had to do it on my own. It was offered. They didn't encourage anybody to do it, but they offered. I had to ask for it. I had to get after it. And I had to do it myself. And once I started that process, then they started helping us with it. So it wasn't a given. You had to earn it. And the job that I had in the warehouse, obviously, I was in the prison for a total of 9 years inside the fence, and the last 5 years were outside the fence at the work dorm. That's when I had the trucking job of delivering furniture, food, supplies to different prisons around the state, juvenile facilities, and furniture to all state, local, and county facilities like sheriff's departments, state troopers, all the way to the Capitol building. We could deliver furniture in many different places. I mean, and that gave me a sense of purpose, and that also showed me a level of professionalism because I was dealing with different people. I wasn't dealing with your average day Joe. I wasn't dealing with inmates. I was dealing with professional people, and that right there forced me to grow up and to be a man and to be more of a professional person. And it also helped me to strive to want to be successful in life.
So, since getting out of prison, how has truck driving helped you to rebuild your life?
Well, I mean, here I am. I'm, you know, initially getting out of prison, it was a struggle. It's not easy, and I'm not going to lie about it. It was a struggle. Nobody hands you anything. and it's not going to be easy, and it's hard. And when you have a felony and you try to get a job anywhere, nobody wants to hire you. I don't care who you are, unless you know somebody. It's hard. But I had to fight and I had to struggle, and I had multiple different jobs to get to where I am, and I had to, just kind of keep moving forward and keep staying positive and continue to fight for what I wanted. And here I am today. I've been, I've had my CDL for over 20 years, and I've got 15 years, maybe more, over the road for driving semi trucks. It made me responsible. I, I would say that it made me successful in a way, because here I am. I own my own house with my beautiful fiance here, and we have nice cars. Our house is brand new, and this is my first time owning a house. So, I mean, what can you say? I mean, that that in itself says it all. I did not become that revolving door. I put all that stuff away from me. No, I didn't even want to talk about it. People wanted to ask me about it. I didn't want to talk about it. What's the point?
Yeah.
Don't ask me about it. It's done and over with. I'm
Mm,
looking towards the future. My
exactly.
past, and the past is dead.
Yeah.
This is where I am today. This is
Right.
what I want today.
And having that CDL really probably gave you a little bit more of an advantage than someone else coming out of prison, especially for that long a period of time, because you had kind of that skill to fall back on that other people don't have. And so rather than having to go work at McDonald's or someplace like that, you were able to show that you have the skill, you're very valuable, and it made it a little bit easier to go out and find a truck driving job versus, having to do something else that maybe doesn't pay well or that would just put you back through that revolving door.
Absolutely, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, there's certain requirements of having a CDL that you have to have before people will hire you. You have to have a minimum of at least 1 to 2 years experience within the last 3 years, which was hard because I didn't quite have that. Uh, I would say legally, but I would say like uh, as far as the DOT standpoint, because it was state, and we didn't fall under those guidelines, even though I had been doing it for so long. So it made it harder for companies to want to hire you or hire me because of the insurance. The insurance companies don't want to hire people that don't have the experience, even though I did. Uh, but I just continued to get after it, man. I didn't give up. I continued to do what I wanted to do, and I got to where I am today because
Right.
I did not give up.
Right. You didn't let that discourage you and like, oh, I can't find a job. Nobody will hire me. So I'm just going to go work in a factory or, whatever. You really set your foot down and you used all that confidence and sense of purpose that you had developed over the last, 5+ years, and you made something of yourself. You didn't just settle for what you thought you should have.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned factories. I did work in a factory, okay, but it wasn't like my final destination. It wasn't. I didn't work in the factory because that's the only thing that I had to do, that I could do. I worked and I got a job at the Menards Distribution Center because I wanted to get my foot in the door. I knew what they had to offer. I knew everything that they had, and I figured if I got my foot in that door, I knew I could work my way up, work my way to whatever department I wanted to get to, and I did. In doing so, I worked as a yard horse for 4.5 years. I ended up being able to drive for contractors. I ended up being able to drive for them for a while. And unfortunately, my mentor that I drove for uh, about a year, and him and we had come to an agreement to, possibly, as he wanted to retire, and I was going to buy his truck. And he unfortunately passed away from COVID. And so that didn't happen, but I didn't let that stop me. I ended up getting a job, and I drove for Ruan for a while. So, I mean, there was many trials and obstacles, but it's still, I did not let that get me down. But like I said, I started in that factory, and I worked my way out of the factory, worked as a yard dog. I helped deliver, I delivered products for Menards, as a master driver. And then, I mean, it just kept moving forward from there.
That's
Didn't
great.
stop.
That's
I
great.
won't let, I won't let that stuff get me down.
That's great. Now here you are today. So let's see. You talked about being the best version of yourself. What does that mean to you?
The best version of myself, meaning that I am the mature person of myself. I used to be a very immature person. I used to be a very jealous and insecure person. That's what boys do. I'm not a boy anymore. I'm a man. I had to grow up. That is the best version of myself. I'm a loving, kind, caring man. And you, of all people, should know those details about me.
I do, but the listeners don't.
Yeah, obviously.
But the good news is the listeners get to hear the best version of you today sitting here. So
Right. There's the unsavory version of me, and then there's the best version of me. And that's where we are today. The best version of me is the one that is stepping outside of his comfort zone, doing this podcast for a specific reason, a very honorable reason, and somebody who loves and cares about people, and somebody who wants to help people.
So let's move on to talk about that. So let's talk about what inspired you to create the podcast, 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how that has had an impact on you, the reason for the reason for the podcast. So let's start with what inspired you to create the podcast.
Well, unfortunately, the tragedy that was left in our family was the inspiration behind 8158. My cousin Billy, uh, he was a 20-year veteran in the National Guard, retired, been on with the Sheriff's Department on and off. I know he worked in the jail. He just went back to the Sheriff's Department. He was kind of like an all-around guy, he owned his own realty company, but he had partners and stuff, and he did a lot of things, and he helped his community in a lot of ways. Um, However, after his year of being back on with the Sheriff's Department, he was killed in the line of duty, and that left a huge impact on us, on our family. It left a hole in our family, but also it gave me courage to want to step up, stand up, step out, and speak out. And that's the inspiration behind 8158, because I don't believe that not just law enforcement, but I don't believe that our fire, our EMS, our dispatchers, anybody that's involved in first responders, search and rescue, or whatever it could be, or wildlands, I don't believe that they get the credit and the love and respect that they deserve. I think they're often forgotten after they're helped, after they've helped people in their most dire situations. And it's like people think, oh, it's your job, just whatever. You're supposed to do this. I pay your salary, just entitled people. I'm not saying that all people are like that. I'm just saying that, in general, that people have a tendency to forget. And I don't want people to forget. I don't want people to forget the sacrifice that my cousin made. I don't want to forget people to forget the sacrifice that firefighters make when they rush into a burning building to save somebody's life, or their child, or their pet, or whatever the situation may be. I don't want them to forget the fact that paramedic or that EMS had revived them and brought them back, or because they were in an overdose, they brought them back to life. or the dispatcher that kept them alive because they advised them what to do in the situation that they were in and them sending them help.
So would you say that you hope that the podcast will help people to realize that first responders are people too, they're humans too, they have families, they go to work just like the rest of us and hope that they come home? Would you say that that's kind of the hope for what people take away from this?
Absolutely. I mean, because that's what it's all about. You know, our first responders, they do have families. And I'm a prime example of that. Billy was my cousin. You know, we didn't have the closest relationship, but I still loved him. You know, I still had an admiration for him and I still respected him. And, you know, and I do have other friends that are first responders and they do have families and are loved. They are people that are relied on. You
Absolutely.
know,
I
and there
hope.
are people at home that want them to come home every night or
Absolutely.
whenever their shift is over.
I mean, absolutely. So, with that being said, how do you see the podcast growing in the future? What plans do you have?
Well, I'm going to imagine that, and I'm going to put out in the universe that this podcast is it's going to thrive and it's going to boom because I don't think that there is, if any, if there is, there's not enough podcasts that are speaking in favor of our first responders. COVID probably is a prime example, or what happened to George Floyd. Yes, we are all sad about what happened to him. You know, it wasn't right. But you can't count all the bad, you know, those very few bad apples against all of the brave men and women that serve their community. There's more of them than there are bad apples. And as much as it may trigger people, you know, I don't care. I don't care if it triggers you or not. This is the reality of the world. This is the reality of it. There are more good officers and more good firefighters and EMS out there than there are the bad ones. So I want people to get it through their thick skulls. Get it through your heads. There are more good officers out there, and you may not like it when you get a ticket, but you deserved it. Trust me, I've been on that end. I've gotten plenty of tickets, and you know I have. But I had it coming, and I didn't bitch and complain about it. I didn't whine around about it. I didn't throw a big old fit. I didn't put a camera in their face. I didn't go sitting in front of the police departments and film them and try to play media cop. I showed them the respect and honor that they deserve, and I let them go about their business, and they let me go about mine, and nothing bad has ever happened to me. Why? Because I showed them the respect, and I didn't do anything that would give them any indication that I was going to be a bad person towards them. When you want to put yourself on the radar, that's when you act a fool. When you act a fool, you put yourself on the radar. That's when their guard goes up.
Absolutely. So, do you have any future plans for expanding the podcast?
Oh, absolutely. We do have other plans. We would like to not just expand the podcast, but we want to start a nonprofit organization that deals with uh, offering scholarships to new recruits for all first responders. We would like to also offer specific scholarships to families of their lost loved ones that were killed in the line of duty. And also, we spoke about doing a second chance scholarship for juveniles who can qualify for being a first responder. And 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 one thing that I thought of, and maybe they might need counseling, so maybe part of that scholarship money could go towards them getting the counseling they need, so that they will be healthy enough to become a first responder, so that they can thrive and get away from the bad behaviors that they're doing and become the good person that they are. Because there's a good person in everybody's heart. It's just got to be brought out sometimes. You know,
Those are
those are
great. goals.
Yes, those are the things that I didn't have when I was going through my trials. I didn't, I had a lot of good people coming in and out of my life, but it wasn't enough to make that big of an impact. And when I thought about counseling when I was growing up was, I don't trust counselors. I don't want to do it. But sometimes you just got to let your guard down and just talk to them and let them bring the good out of you.
Yep, those are great goals and great aspirations for the podcast. And if you put it out into the world and manifest it, then good things will come. So we'll see where we are this time next year. We'll check in with you this time next year and see where you're at. So what advice would you give to someone who feels lost or uncertain about their purpose?
Well, I've been there. I know how it is. Sometimes you just got to get out of your own way. I was in my own way, and my own way got me in prison. You got to get out of your own way, and you got to remember that you could do anything that you put your mind to. You can, you really can. You just got to get out of your own way and make your mind up. Once you put that in your mind and you get that mindset that this is what I want, to go after it. You don't sit around. You can't sit around. It's not going to come to you. You have to earn it. You have to get out there and do it.
And I would also, to add on to that, say yes to opportunities when they're presented to you. Don't be scared. Don't be like, oh, it's, that's not me, or what if I fail? Just say, if an opportunity presents itself, say yes to it, because you never know how it could change your life. You never know where you could be.
And that's a good point, because I took opportunities that I didn't think really would help or didn't matter, or didn't want to, didn't pertain to what I was doing. But those opportunities, they kind of moved into other opportunities, and those opportunities continue to roll up to different things, and so, like you said, just say yes. It may not pertain to you at that moment, but you never know where life will take you. And do not doubt yourself. Don't doubt yourself, because you can do it. And do not refuse yourself any opportunities that might come your way, because then again, you're just getting in your own way, getting in your own head. And
Absolutely.
that's your worst enemy. You yourself are your worst enemy when you get in your own way.
Absolutely.
I'm a prime example of that. That's why I can say that.
All right. So last question to wrap up. If you could say anything to your younger self, what would you say?
Boy, if I could talk to my younger self, boy, I'd slap myself silly. No, but really, I would just sit myself down and I would say, look, you have great opportunities. There's, don't let your past get in front of you. You don't have to go down these roads. You don't have to do these things. You are a better person than that, and you're good. You're going to become a good man. Just have faith and believe in yourself, no matter what anybody says. You know, I've been called stupid, because I didn't want to go to school and didn't want to do my homework. My own teacher called me stupid,
That's
and
terrible.
that was just because I didn't want to do the homework. I hated homework. I didn't think homework was. If I wanted to go to school, I want to learn in school, not do homework.
Yeah.
Homework, you know. But that at that time, that's I had to do homework. But
Mm-hmm.
I refused to do it. I was
Mm-hmm.
wasting my time. That's the way I thought. But anyways, going back to this, I would just tell myself, just do what you got to do. Save the pride. Just let it go. Be a man. Grow up. Don't be insecure. Don't let things pass you by. Take the opportunities and go for it. You can do anything you want. You just got to set your mind to do it. And you have to get after it. It's not going to come to you. You have to go to it.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much for having me come on and guest host and interview you and have the listeners get to know you a little bit better. And then just a quick little blurb about what's coming up on the next episode. We will hear from Rico's cousin Billy's wife, his widow, who has been dealing with the loss of him for the last 6 months. So we will be talking to her, and we'll also be talking to his sister. So stay tuned for those episodes coming up shortly, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, everyone, for showing up, and we appreciate your support, and we love you all. We love our first responders. We love our men and women that serve our country, put their lives on the line. May God bless you. We love you all. You do us a great service. And thank you. Thank you for joining us on 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Every story we share is a tribute to the courage and resilience of first responders and their families. If this episode has impacted, encouraged, or inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who supports first responders. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, and Truth Social at 8158 Podcast for updates. Remember to visit our website, www.8158podcast.com. For questions, collaborations, or to share your story, our email address is contactus@8158podcast.com. Until next time, let's continue to honor their legacies and remember their sacrifices that protect us all. This is Rico signing off and honoring 8158.